And so, welcome. Thank you. There is a reason I want to start this. So the Development Studies Association Ireland is trying to build dialogues between practitioners, development practitioners and academia, and have some kind of input on policies, locally and globally. We normally have the big international NGOs as part of civil society study groups, and we listen to a lot of that. But I thought it would be nice to bring in all kinds of smaller groups, because I had gone for an event which I don't know how many of you have seen. This is A Better World. This is Ireland's policy for international development, which was launched this year, but it was prepared by last year. In this, it says, it actually says in its new initiative, strengthen our collaboration with Irish civil society partners on public engagement and outreach to effectively tell the story of Ireland's global solidarity and development. It also says it builds on strong foundations, including the legacy of our missionaries, our volunteers, and our NGOs.
I suppose in the area in Philipsburg and Dublin 7, there's a very high proportion of people who come from different ethnic and faith backgrounds. But when we saw the festival, when we were involved in the festival, even though we tried to make some of the programming diversified, we had Indian dancing, Indian music, Slovakian choirs, Nigerian dance troupes, Roma musicians. But we found that the people involved in making the decisions in the festival were people who were volunteers like ourselves, and most of the audiences were not very diverse. They tended to be white Irish, Indigenous people. So we wondered about that, and we wanted to, we wondered why the festival wasn't reflective of the diversity of the people who were resident in the area. And I suppose we kind of came to the conclusion that when you're running a festival, you really, the energies, it has to happen. There's a deadline, the program goes out, the posters go out, the tickets go out, and in that rush, it's very hard to look at other issues like diversity and interculturalism.
When we talk about it in the discussion, it's really basically questioning the whole idea of Ireland of the welcomes that has made us reflect on that. Kind of mixed feelings. I suppose we don't agree. It's been relatively successful. But there is also, we hear from volunteers from other countries, some interesting comments that our general sense that maybe people think this is something simply for people from other countries, that it's not something of particular relevance to our Indigenous Irish people.
So we are a group came together from at the point of contact to open a debate, to open space, place for all artists, and to be an inclusion in Irish arts of artists. In Ireland we have a lot of artists here, but we also want to add to the richness of Irish art here through open space for other identity, other people, from migrant, from refugee, asylum seeker, including those living in the direct provision system. So our aim is to form a we welcome artists, creatives to join with us to build its profile. So this is the one of our key rule. We need them to show their identities, to show their work, not be afraid about to connect to see what Irish artists do. No, we want to see all art type in one place in Ireland, so their work. Our role is to starting point for sharing information, connecting, to have collaboration, exhibition, running workshop, conducting research, and many other creative possibilities.
So the AkiDwa was formed around the year 2001, And it was answering, it was responding to a need which was existing at that time. And what was going on was that there were a lot of people from Awa coming into the country, and mostly African Union. So Salanda was like, what are we going to do? And so they started having spiritual events. Sometimes they go and stand outside the GPO, and the sisters would dance. They would dance, so when people stand and look at them, and they go, oh my God, these women are really dancing. And that used to make them very happy, just dancing. And then someone told them, well, you can also, as you dance, maybe people started putting some money. And they said that now, out of that money, the ritual money, they meet again at the Gresham for a coffee, or just any other coffee shop. And then they started now thinking, I've talked about the opportunities which are mixed with challenges, like before the challenges of an opportunity. And even right now, actually I can say because of the recent events that our work is starting, especially how we talk about practices like genital mutilation in Ireland. That's when now we are looking at reframing the language. When you're working with practicing communities here, how we talk about it and other things, so that we do not say our women and girls are women, that we do not put women in danger, women and children in danger. We want more protection for children.
So I wanted also to present you with 2 or 3 sentences with one paper. It said that the Irish state's focus on interculturalism and integration of migrants and refugees was a response to the reportedly failed European policies of assimilation and multiculturalism. Fair enough. Migrant-led associations, especially organizations established by migrants no longer vital to Ireland's economy, so I'm quoting it, actually managed to both appropriate and resist integrationist state discourses. Another observation I had during the last year's annual conference of DOCAS, migrants residing in Ireland, although they now comprise about 11.6% of the population of the country according to the last census, have not been engaged in Irish charities. So the diaspora self-organizing versus joining local CSO. So I found this voice from the Irish third sector important. And the last thing, I looked at the last special Eurobarometer. It's from 2018, according to which the Irish as a nation appeared to be the ones most in favor of providing financial support to civil society organizations that promote integration of migrants. So here you have the society speaking. So I presented you with 3 voices. The state speaking about the organizations established by migrants no longer vital to the Irish economy, by the sector of civil society organizations, Irish charities engaged abroad, which wonder why migrants haven't been as much engaged in Irish charities, and the third one of civil society saying that we are in favor of supporting migrant organizations.
Picture this, that every week, every year of your life, you get a payment from the state that's enough for a decent life. That's what we call the basic income. So early on, we agreed that our basic aims, apart from our internal organization aims, were to develop our own understanding of basic income, to raise awareness about basic income by means of dialogue with others rather than going out and trying to say, this is the answer, do it, and to reach out to other civil society organizations for support. But one thing we have decided in recent years is that it's important to emphasize that basic income is part of a progressive program that includes strong universal public services, so it's not a substitute for good public services. And another thing that I think has worked well is that we've always tried to welcome whatever contribution anyone's willing to make. So we don't Somebody doesn't come in the door and say, oh, why don't you try doing this thing which you hate doing? You say, what would you like to do? What kind of thing are you good at and that you want to do? And then we say, well, you do that. And if you can't do anything else, that's grand. Right? Another decision that I think has worked out well is that we did develop early on this kind of central set of texts that we could use basically for our website and then for our presentation, for our leaflets and all that kind of stuff. So that we have a kind of core set of text that can be then drawn on for whatever purposes we have.
We're working on Irish political action. I think this is the simplest way to describe. We are trying to generate awareness and political pressure on our local representatives, TDs, the government, when we have one, to really get their act together and do what Ireland has to do to be part of what needs to happen in the next 10 years if things are not to go really horribly wrong. So, Dundrum Climate Vigil. We're just a bunch of people standing on the street, like that. And we stand on the street, on the main street of Dundrum village, every Friday morning for 1 hour. And we have 2 nice placards, you can see them here, which effectively encapsulate the 2 things that are our immediate aims, if you like, or long-term aims. One is raise awareness locally. And the other one is to say, we are supporting the students. We are supporting the Irish school student movement, and we are articulating to the people we talk to the demands that that student movement has. And so what are we trying to do? Well, we have a short-term aim, well, I suppose medium-term, which is simply to be there. And you will notice we call ourselves a vigil, because we sat and we said, are we a protest? Are we a rally? What on earth are we? And from somewhere this word vigil came up, and we took it on, and actually we found it very helpful, because it's a way of saying it's our presence that is saying something. And you could say a vigil is about watching, and it's about watching what's happening to our planet. It's also watching what our decision makers are doing and thinking, what can we do to move things on.
It's to be involved in your food production, and it's a locally based economic model of agriculture. So the idea is that in our particular one, there's a group of us and we have found a farmer, and every Thursday we go to the same place and we pick up our veg. Now when I'm explaining to people I would say veg box, but it's not a veg box, it's 5 different types of veg, and you get a section, a share. And the idea is the farmer doesn't have to go to any supermarket, he or she doesn't have to have perfect veg, and it doesn't have to be, the right shape or size. Now you don't get to choose your veg. It's seasonal, it's local, because so far we've had farmers in Clonsilla, Swords and Selbridge, so it's local as you get. It's very hard to get, veg grown in Dublin. Yes, so urgency is the international CSA network, and here's their statement. Community-supported agriculture is a direct partnership based on the human relationship between people and one or several producers, whereby the risks, responsibilities and rewards of farming are shared through a long-term binding agreement. The biggest difficulty of all would be my lack of imagination, and that's what I think is key to getting to people, not getting to people's but catching that moment in time, I really want to do this. I want to be part of this. And that was for me when I heard about CSOs, I was like, yeah, and then other people may not be in. How do I get them on board? What's that moment in time that's going to catch them and go, yeah, do you know what, I want to.
So this might actually make a link between the 2 sections, is one experience that I've drawn on quite a bit in researching both of these things is the experience of being what they call a 1.5 generation migrant myself, you've heard this phrase, having come here as a child and being around a lot of people who were themselves international, whether they were Irish or not Irish, but moving in quite an international world of refugees, political activists, academics and so on, and watching that over the generations. So, because we quite often talk of these things in very static ways, this problem exists in Irish society. But to see how it exists in generational terms, so how people slowly integrate themselves, move from one kind of problem to another, see new problems appearing in their children. My daughter is now a migrant in another country, experiencing a different kind of problem, and how organisations deal with this as well. Deal with being maybe a network of people who are quite marginal and actually in the organisation because it gives them a way to connect to other people, which has been quite a perennial feature of Irish society. So Powell and Gagan's research on Irish civil society found even if you moved from one parish to the next, this gave you a better reason to be in local organisations because your time wasn't all spoken for with friends and family. You needed a way to make connections. So to see those things happening and think of them organisationally and in terms of organisational culture and biography as well as simply as sort of static concepts.
If I might have a question to our last speaker, I looked at your internet site before coming here today, and I was intrigued by the outcome you conducted, a needs assessment of African women living in Ireland, and just to present what my question would refer to. So that survey elicited responses from over 200 females from 17 countries, and what emerged that feelings of exclusion, isolation, racial abuse and discrimination, and issues related to gender-based violence, which is understood. However, my question is, and I wonder whether this research actually approached it, because maybe it didn't, so this was caused by whom? Because my guess wouldn't be that it's the host country. That would be my guess. So correct me if I'm wrong. So was it by the Irish or maybe by the countrymen? And also raising from this issue, I would say that of course empowering women, which has been on the national and international policy agenda for decades now, and it still remains a top priority. However, it would not suffice before or as well trying to address the cause of women's unequal status in society. And obviously migrant women are subject to both gender and racial discrimination and as such face more challenges than women born here. However, the point is that, society's male privilege should be addressed. So we may empower women as much as we want, but if we don't address the issue of male privilege, we won't manage to achieve it by empowering women only. So my question was those feelings of exclusion, is isolation, racial abuse, discrimination. Was it referring to people in general residing in this country, or?
One of the problems AkiDwa was responding to when it was formed, it was those feelings of exclusion among the women. And because the women were experiencing actually those problems you're saying, like domestic violence in their homes, racial abuse. Actually, we have a catalogue of some of the things the women said they were called or told about themselves because of where they look and where they come from. And there were all those things, and we're talking about empowering women by making them to be aware of their rights. But even when we tell them, like even when you make someone aware, like even me, I'm sitting here, but you can imagine, even me, I go through those things. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, like even when you make someone aware of their rights, but then you tell them like this is where you're supposed to go because of X, Y, Z. But even when they go there, they find other barriers. So like what some women do, what they choose to do, and that's very deliberate, is not to do nothing. Sometimes someone will come to us and say the same thing. You know, something like gender-based, gender-based violence is very broad again, domestic violence. And again, even when it happens, there are also other layers as to why a woman will choose not to report or to report. So, and when you also look at disempowerment, again, it happens at so many levels. Like maybe where someone is coming from, there are issues. Maybe even though someone has entered the country, there are issues. And then when you land here, there are other issues. So that's why I feel there should be deliberate efforts made to target some groups because of their unique situation. And that's what we are trying to do.
I know you were asking Karen, but just to take your point forward on, like loneliness or exclusion for women. Like when I came here initially as a student, I came here on a scholarship, and I was like, it's like the dream. Do you know what I mean? It's like the dream. And I was very excited because I was like, it's my first time going abroad, studying and all that. But even as an educated person who went to class every day, I had about maybe say 50%. So 50% were Irish students, and till today, after I've come back, I don't have any friends. We never stayed friends. So what is missing? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, loneliness and exclusion is not just for somebody who comes from a disprivileged background. It could be for anybody who comes over, even as a educated or even as a professional. And again, to take the point forward, like nobody hired me, even when I was looking for a job to work in the social sector. This is something I am so passionate about, and I believe that my perspective as an Indian and having worked there would give so much of, do you know what I mean? It would challenge the perspective of the donor mindset. And I think that was something that I was presenting, but nobody was still willing to take me on. And I think those things, no matter what your background is, as long as you're considered a migrant, I think those exist. And that's something that we just can't.
This is your baggage.
Yeah, it is. It's a cross you have to bear. Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, like when I was here first in 2015, and I got to know my Irish classmates, and but it was very superficial. And back home, the social capital is very high. The sense of community is very strong. Even during Christmas that year, it was the worst Christmas I ever had. Nobody invited me over. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's wrong. Christmas here is beautiful. Now that I have an Irish family, I understand that. Like, it's very family oriented, but what about the other people who have no families and are living here? I mean, and those are things that, I'm really saying it transcends class, everything else. So just want to see that, sorry.
I have a question for her, maybe. So, for example, for our next exhibition, maybe if we can talk about this with us, if Irish artists who support migrant issues and he would like to join, so we are open.
Yeah. Well, I was also going to say, like, as a visual, the idea of this transhumance is that the landscape, like using the image of the landscape, that the landscape includes all the people who move through it. So that could be anywhere in the world. And that I'm sort of not, we decided on the name, it was somebody else actually decided on the name Migrant Artist Community, but that could change because I think, and some people are uncomfortable with that name because of that idea of, do you always, is it a label, is it? And that was the aim, because I'm curating this exhibition, but this is only this is one thing that's happening, other things will happen, but this one thing is this exhibition. And why I said to try and not pigeonhole people, to see the landscape is something that can change, or it always changes. Society always changes everywhere. So it's seeing people are a part of the landscape, almost like part of the tactile material. I don't know if that makes any sense.
First of all, I just refer to Wendy. I think that Dundrum and other groups, and just generally here, there is a kind of a feeling, an understanding feeling in respect of our children, grandchildren, and the next generation. But there still really isn't that connection with the people who are suffering now in the developing world. So, I wonder, would it be something of interest to Dundrum to make contact with a location that's actually suffering now, maybe where there's an Irish volunteer, and maintain a kind of educational contact? It wouldn't really involve a huge amount of extra work. It would just be maybe circulating information by email on their list about this location that they've twinned it, and then do the kind of reverse procedure in terms of here and that country. I think that might be good educationally. The other one is...
I prefer to buy organic veg myself. I noticed that a lot of it's from Spain, and it must be sprayed before it leaves the country, because I've never seen one insect in any of the bags or anything, you know. So it's like people are buying organic and it's not, it's still sprayed to a certain extent.
Yeah, the definition of organic, you know, I always think as well, why do, like, this big thing, why do I have to say my food has no pesticides or fertilizers? Why can't everybody else say, I've got this on my food? Yeah, that's a really good question. They call Spain the salad basket of Europe.
It's
I love
huge.
it's growing indoors. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't know about that.
I think there's also an element of slave labour
Also,
as well,
especially in Italy and
migration from North Africa.
There are two standards. You know, there's the European standard for organic food, which I'm not an expert, but those who know about these things say is lower than when you see the Irish standard, IOFGA, or the British one, Soil Association. The original national standards, I don't know any others except British and Irish labels, would say that they have a higher standard than when they had a European-wide one. Obviously, there was a certain amount of compromise.
We can't even say our food is organic officially because it's not certified organic. We have to say things like chemical free.
I'll first refer to the practical issue you raised, which I would interpret as wither too from here. The organization you represent, in Poland they would be called cooperatives, and they do absolutely the same thing that you do. But I've also noticed a commercial branch of this, which actually caters to and targets the more picky middle class people, but it also ends up supporting the local farmers. And what they do, they also offer products produced locally, but they would already, for example, you would have sausages, you would have bread, you would have dumplings, and so not just the basic products, and it targets to a more picky middle class group. So that could be, a way to make it more popular, because not everybody would subscribe to the philosophy of no waste, and because this sounds a bit too frugal. The message should be positive. So that is something to consider. And just two more comments, more as a researcher. From what I heard here, this testifies to an observed move away from collective action to connective action, because all those organizations you represent, they're not just a bunch of people doing something together with an aim, but they're a bunch of people who have an actual connection, who have established also a connection among themselves. And the other thing I would observe as a researcher is I see a tension everywhere, but especially with you, with basic income, and with your group, between the need to institutionalize in order to have a greater impact and to remain grassroots. And actually there is an excellent, you can easily Google it, YouTube short video by Arundhati Roy, the best among the best Indian writer, but also activist. And she's speaking about the NGOization of resistance, meaning that once you move towards NGOization, meaning becoming institutionalized, which indeed helps you have some impact to policy making, then willy-nilly the element where you started from, resistance, is becoming channeled and unfortunately also limited. So this tension is, I would say, also is evidenced here. Yeah, thank you.
Before that, I'd also want to thank for bringing NGOization, because I think we are very in a good space by not making it a big NGO, because we'll get involved in all kinds of institutional structures. So I think what we are doing in these small spaces, I think is fantastic. I come from a background of having worked with big NGOs, and I have seen that it just becomes top heavy after a while. What is happening at grassroots, it's probably the best way to go. And keep on pushing ourselves and getting things done.
Well, no, I found the afternoon very interesting, just seeing the diversity of things that we're all doing around the place, and we're all doing stuff that is complementary to each other. Right? I mean, there's not a single thing that has happened among any of the people in this room that isn't a piece of a wider program of social change, and it's useful for us to kind of situate ourselves within that broader picture.
Just like Nita has said, she comes from a background of working in NGOs, and so do I. And we are still working in the same area here in Ireland. And what I can say, I think that question was not answered when it was asked. What I can say is that maybe the big NGOs in Ireland, maybe they need to learn from some of our experiences, because we bring a lot to the table, which goes unrecognized. Because I feel there are a lot of people who are telling people what to do, and sometimes what people are being told to do, it's not even how it's done, it's supposed to be done. And I feel that mismatch sometimes it's bringing a lot of issues and dysfunctionalism and confusion, which is not right.
Lots of things. I think it's a wonderful afternoon. And if I looked, like you were saying, John, if I looking at the program, I thought, well, that's it's diverse in a bad way, or not in a very coherent way. It seems of lots of different groups. And I suppose the wonderful thing is just the connections that have come through. And I suppose the strongest thing is remembering the global connection. And we can all do that and bring that back into our work. So thank you for organising it.
Thank you. Most interesting and thought-provoking and so on. And I don't have any real words of wisdom except the old saying that comes back, which is what we're all doing, which is think globally, act locally. And the local is really important, and particularly where we are.
Very inspiring, and again to see ourselves in that context of part of a bigger jigsaw, a bigger picture, which when you're sort of worried about, who has the tea bags, and it's Tuesday, and will anybody turn up, or did you put up enough posters, or did you send enough emails? You forget that. So I think today has been really, really good for us.
I suppose I was thinking like one word or one thing about the word connect, maybe. On a personal note, I love nature, and when I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I totally get what you mean by that, because I've been in that situation. And you're thinking, yeah, big picture here. And I go out and connect with nature, and then I connect with people, and I'm thinking on the connection globally. And that's what's here today in this room. And that's what we do when we go outside, is we're connecting. As opposed to collecting. So yeah, that's thanks.
It was wonderful networking, and it's good to listen to the story how organization Vigil starts. So it's good to listen to the story about how it starts and the aim. And I just want to encourage people, if they have idea, to just start. And we understand that don't look for perfection. If you want to do something, just do it. Don't look for perfection. That is good.
It's very hard to live up to that.
Yeah, just do it.
Thank you again.
Thank you.